sit!
Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Rich Dotson. He's Garret Price.
How's it going?
It's going good. No Matt O'Hara on today's episode. He won't be here next week as well. He actually left for vacation with his family to get some sunshine to try and catch up to my beautiful olive skin, even though he's naturally tanned, which is annoying.
He is.
Yeah.
He's always tanned.
So
that perma-tan.
Oh, good for him. Good for him, not me. I get super pasty white, you know. You see my butt cheeks in the wintertime. Oh, man. So we're here. We're talking quarterbacks and tight ends, kind of like piggybacking off of our show from yesterday where we had the buys. And I kind of want to start at the top here with the quarterbacks, Garret, because you know, when I was sitting here and I was going through our most recent ADP and I was looking for a quarterback to sell, and I really had like a hard time with this. And like, I'm never going to come on and do a show where like, I'm just going to say stuff because like, you know, like we prepare these shows out, like the show titles, at least like a month in advance. So like, we know what the show topic's going to be. And it's just kind of on us to do whatever kind of work we want to do. And then we all sit down with our own work and we kind of surprise each other with our thoughts. Like we don't do the show in detail. Like, hey, I'm talking about this, and these are my points. Like we don't do that. Like we sit down like three friends and we talk about Dynasty, whatever the show topic might be, and what we have. And this was quarterback sells. And if I'm being honest, man, I feel like I had no problem with the buys because I really feel like there was a lot of good value in the buys in the quarterback. And I think after staring at this more for this sell episode I think it's a really good market to go out there and get yourself a quarterback in Superflex leagues because there is some values out here. I don't see anything here that is like so far off. Like everything screams like a buy to me. Like I'm buying Deshaun Watson where his ADP is. Like Matt mentioned yesterday, Kirk Cousins. I brought up Baker Mayfield. Will Levis was my guy. You could argue Michael Penix and Bo Nix are buys. Aaron Rodgers is a buy, I mentioned. Down there, Daniel Jones at 144 in a Superflex league is worth the gamble even on a one-year wonder. But when it comes to sells, like, you know, at least for our ADP, right? The ADP run, the people that follow Dynasty Nerds, like they understand like how the game is played. Like those quarterbacks are extremely valuable and they're all going in the first two rounds of startups, right? Like we have quarterback number, what is it? Jaden Daniels is quarterback. We have like 15, 16 quarterbacks here going in the first two rounds of the draft. So to me, like you can't sell any of those guys because they're all going in a row. Like they're all going in a row. Like all those guys are in order. And then, you know, it skips a beat there. And then you see Trevor Lawrence. Then it skips, you know, a couple players here, Brock Purdy, then Dak Prescott. I mean, the closest I got to a sell, Garret, was like, okay, Dak Prescott, because, you know, he's 30 years old, which again, I'm not complaining about his age because it's not old for a quarterback these days. It was more about like the uncertainty of how that's all going to work out in Dallas. Yeah. Like it's so odd to me. Like they have not paid him yet or tried to. And like, you know, Jones should know like every day you wait, there's a chance that that contract gets more expensive because somebody else signs one. But even look at that. I mean, Dak Prescott finished his quarterback 3 overall last year. Like, so it's like, you got to go out there and sell him in a Superflex league. And for what? Like Jared, like I was like, oh, Jared Goff is like a whole another round about behind him. But like, you're not getting a whole ton for like moving down around, you know what I mean? Like, or if I move down for Tua, like what are you going to get? You're going to get Elijah Moore, you know, like what kind of throw in are you going to get there? Are you going to get Zach? I mean, maybe like you're going to get a cheap rental. Is it worth that juice worth to squeeze? Like a Gus Edwards, a Zach Moss at running back. Like maybe if you're desperate, you can make a lateral move there. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this because, you know, right before we chose the show, I was like, hey man, listen, I don't have a guy here. Like I sat here and looked at the ADP and studied it, and I feel really good about where everybody is from their standpoint. Unless if you're asking me to find more buys, then I can lean that way. Yeah. But I feel like right now the quarterback market is pretty set in value. What say you?
No, we were talking about it ahead of time, and we don't want to force something just to say like, oh, we got to do a sell episode, so here's a guy that you should sell. Like, we're not doing it just to do it. We want to actually give useful information. Like, if I had to, I was going to go the route of the opposite of what I said on the buy show. I really like Justin Herbert at quarterback 9. So can I sell Jalen Hurts, CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson? Those are the top 3 guys in ADP after Mahomes and Allen. So can I sell like those guys to move back? But it's the same information I just gave you on the Herbert. Just flip it. You know, like there's not a lot else to really go on there. And so for me, it's you're right. Right now, the quarterback is being fairly accurately valued or is slightly undervalued overall. So for us to say, like, sell these guys in a market that is screaming buy doesn't make a lot of sense. It would be like if we're in real estate or we're in stocks or we're in anything. Like, overall, the market's telling us one thing. Why would we force the opposite when that's not what the market is calling for? So, you know, for us to just come on here and say, like, sell this guy because I need somebody to sell and I'm going to pick a random stat to just hopefully prove my point, like, that's not worth doing it. But I think this is a lesson in and of itself. You know, we come on here and we want to make sure that we are giving good, actionable information. And on our sells episode right now, at the quarterback position, the actionable information is don't sell. Like, don't sell your quarterbacks right now. Buy quarterbacks. This is what the market is calling for, especially once you get into those, if we're talking Superflex, once you get into that quarterback like 15 and beyond, those quarterback 2s, those are the guys right now that are especially good value, that have warts somewhere. Maybe it's they're a little bit older, or there's, you know, uncertainty at their position, or they're not proven to the extent that you would like for them to be yet. Those are the guys especially that present really good value, because as much as I, you know, love some of these players, you know, looking at the ADP right now, do I think David Montgomery is a good player? Sure. Do I think Ramondre Stevenson's a good player?
I saw that.
But that doesn't mean I would rather have Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, like all of those guys. I would take over those 2.
Yeah, and I saw that, and I saw those running backs go there ahead of those quarterbacks. I'm like, what is this ADP? Like, what is this, like, the market? And obviously ADP, when you do a startup, it goes a little bit different. Some people will just grab that running back because they don't have a running back. Meanwhile, they could grab a quarterback 3. We kind of mentioned in our last night's show, like, the importance of having a quarterback 3. And I guess if I had to flip it, like, if you go back to not a couple episodes, probably been a couple months, but, like, we did some sells. The ones I still think hold true, like we said sell. I had to sell at the end of the year Tua Tagovailoa. And it was just because, you know, historically, at the end of the season, when the cold weather hits, his numbers drop pretty significantly. And you can look at his number as he finishes quarterback number 9 overall. But if you go on from, like, week 12 on, he had 3 games in double digits, and none of them were in 20 points. So it's kind of like, you know, that's a sell. Like, but it's like a lateral move.
To piggyback on that, Rich, like, if you're thinking in just a this year window, like, I think 2 is especially a good sell for this specific year, because 2 of those last 3 playoff games, if you're expecting to be a contender, 2 of those last 3 playoff games are home against San Francisco and away against Cleveland. Yeah. Like, 2 defenses that are really, really tough. And you're telling me they're going to have to play in Cleveland when it's probably snowing against that defense? And then it doesn't matter where you play the San Francisco defense, home, away, neutral site, Mexico City. Like, I don't care. They're a tough defense to play against.
Yeah, and 2 is going to give you close to single-digit numbers sometimes when it gets cold out there, when the weather drops under, like, 30 degrees. So I would consider him a lateral move. I've said forever, like, I don't believe in Jalen Hurts long-term. I think he's in a really good system. I think he's a really good quarterback. I think he's a very fine quarterback. I do not think he's special. I don't think he's elite. I think he's in the right place, in the right system with the right weapons around him, which is great for him. It got him paid. He can execute that offense. But, like, I would love to move, like, kind of what you said, like, yesterday about the lateral move down. Like, if I could flip Jalen Hurts for Justin Herbert plus, like,
yep,
I'm doing that all day. If I could flip Jalen Hurts for Jared Goff and get, like, a good receiver out of that as well, or maybe like a young running back. Like if there's an avenue for that, like I could take Jalen Hurts and get Jared Goff. Again, I know I say Jared Goff, but Jared Goff just signed a 4-year extension, right? Like he just signed an extension. I don't know, it might have been 3 years, but he just signed an extension in a great offense with great weapons around him. They locked up all the weapons around him at the same time. Like Jared Goff was the last one to get that contract extension. We're hearing good news about Jameson Williams. And last year, Jared Goff finished at quarterback 7. When you talk about a point differential per game, Jalen Hurts had 21.9 points per game. Jared Goff had 17.8. So you're talking about a 3-point differential per game. Like what an easy thing to make up with like another elite prospect somewhere. At like a wide receiver position, the tight end position, the running back position. Like if I can make that move and grab a player there, maybe I offload like an older veteran that still has a name like a DeAndre Hopkins, a Keenan Allen, a Mike Evans, and Jalen Hurts to kind of like help that contender still have that receiver and in turn reciprocate and get like Jared Goff and like I would love to get I'm out to say Brown, but let's say like a Garrett Wilson or. Go ahead.
Would you do like Drake London, Travis Etienne, that range?
I hate making moves like that for a running back. I really do. Like for the running back, I want to be on a rookie contract, like fresh. I know we got 2 more years at Etienne with that picking up the 5th-year option, but like I would love to pick up Drake London. Yeah, Drake London would be a great example. For if I give up Jalen Hurts and Nuke, say that, and I can get back Jared Goff and Drake London, a 22-year-old receiver who's about to take a big upgrade at the quarterback position and has at least a good high upside quarterback behind there, so I feel comfortable in the quarterback position. I would love to make that move 100% all day, every day. And maybe so like these sells aren't like, hey, like just get rid of this quarterback. We don't like him. Like maybe it's time to make a lateral move where the market is because some of these guys are kind of getting pushed down value-wise. And if you like Jared Goff, for example, is somebody who is likely going to be a quarterback 1 again, that in the eyes of probably the most common dynasty player, you could probably get that elite player on top if you sprinkle a little love with that Jalen Hurts. So people are immediately going to be like, oh, I'm getting Jalen Hurts for Jared Goff. And like, oh, I'm giving the upside of like Drake London. He hasn't done anything yet. Like it all depends how savvy your league mates are in your league. But listen, most league mates aren't that savvy. It's just the way it is.
The in the same range, I mean, Dak Prescott, you might not get quite as much back, but like on a points per game basis, Dak Prescott was better, and I expect him to continue to be as good, if not better. So Dak Prescott would be one of those guys too in that same type of range where, yeah, maybe you don't quite get Drake London back, but maybe you get Tank Dell back, or Nico Collins or Devonta Smith. Or somebody like that back. Devonta
Smith is a good one to work in there as well. A receiver you can just steady Eddie, right? Like his worst year would be a wide receiver too. I think that's how good he is. That's how talented he is. And he's somebody that's suppressed by A.J. Brown a little bit. So like he is available in a lot of leagues, even though he's a high quality receiver. Some people automatically like, he's a wide receiver 2 just on his team. Even though he finished as a wide receiver 1 last year. So I like those like lateral moves like you just mentioned there. Some people might be sick of the Joe Burrow injuries. They have Joe Burrow. I've seen a lot of people in the league say, hey, Joe Burrow is available. I have Joe Burrow in some Superflex leagues. People have been trying to get a discount. Like, bro, there's no discount here on Joey B, right? Like, I'll keep sucking up the injuries. It's okay. We'll take them as it goes. Yeah. So maybe that's a player like a Kyler Murray. Like, those are kind of lateral moves like I like to make. And if I can get some juice on top and kind of like, and all I'm trying to do is really just make up for that, like, 3 to 4 point differential. And that's what you're looking at. And we talk about it on the podcast a lot. Like you're not looking at overall finish. You're looking at points per game, right? Like what is this player average points per game? Like now you want to look at the guys at the top because those guys have shown they get through the whole year, but sometimes that's not the case on certain players. I mean, you can go through a 4-week window where you miss 4 games and all of a sudden you're a back end quarterback too, just because of those 4 games. I forget how many points they score. So I love the names of like going to Kyler Murray. I do still love going to Deshaun Watson because I still believe in him. But I know nobody else is going to go that route. But like Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, Kyler Murray, who's going to be at the higher end there. I love those kind of lateral moves. And then finding out what my team needs to succeed, right? Like, and sometimes, and that's just like, you can use that point, Garrett, just like for every dynasty team, right? Like so many people are like hesitant to get rid of their star player. Like, oh, I got CeeDee Lamb. He was the number one over receiver last year. Like, I can't move CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, you 100% can move CeeDee Lamb. Like, that's the whole point of the game. Like, you're not trying to win with one player. You're trying to win with a really good roster. And when you make a move like that, when you make a lateral move, whether it be quarterback or receiver, you want to make sure that you're not getting too much older. You want to stay in that age frame of long-term ability or consistability that you're going to get out of a player and then fill a hole, right? Like, look at the points per game basis and look like these are all little things you could do that really only take about a half hour of your time, right? Like, you go into the Dynasty GM, you look at the league analyzer, like, okay, I'm weak at running back, or I'm somewhat weak at receiver. I need another receiver. I have Pat Mahomes. I have Jalen Hurts. Okay. Mm-hmm. Who's really strong at running back? Do they need a quarterback? Or not even if they need a quarterback, like who are their quarterbacks? All right, let me look at their points per game. Oh, wow, there's only a 3-point differential here, 4-point differential on points per game. You know, he's 28, he's 30. Can I flip him and offer this and get this running back? A lot of times it'll work. You know, like a lot of people, I think to a fault, too many people in Dynasty are like, name drawn or value drawn. Like they have that one elite player on their roster. Like, this is my cornerstone piece. Like, I can't get rid of this piece. When what you should do is, like, usually a good foundation has 4 corners, right? Like to build a pound. So yeah, if you just have those 1 or 2 corners, like, you don't have that strong of a foundation as you think you do. Like, you're trying to build a solid roster here to compete and win championships. So like, if you could flip a CeeDee Lamb for a Garrett Wilson and a slight plus, and like, you give him back as well. It's not like I'm not talking about like a straight return, right? Like, hey, I'll give you Jalen Hurts and you give me Jared Goff and CeeDee Lamb or Garrett Wilson. Like, most people are like, I can't give it the receiver, but like trying to finagle where you're giving a piece back where it's still a quality name, but like you're getting a youth back at the same time and kind of like maintaining a long-term contender. Because that's what we want to do. We don't want to win just one championship. We want to win 1, 2, 3, become a true dynasty, right? Like that's the name of the game, to build a dynasty. So constantly look at your roster and look at these moves and the player values and the points per game and how you can strengthen your roster with youth and talent at the same time by sometimes moving those star players. And like Jalen Hurts falls in that category of quarterbacks that, you know, on a points per game basis, like, will he be that much different in 5 years from this player?
Let me tell you what's going down at Underdog Fantasy. Guys, it is time for Best Ball Mania 5. Don't miss out on the huge $1.5 million first place prize for only a $25 entry. This year, Best Ball Mania 5 will pay out $15 million in total prize money. Download the Underdog Fantasy app and deposit at least $10 using promo code NERDS. Underdog will match your first deposit up to $100. So that means if you put in 20, they'll put in 20. You put in 50, they'll put in 50, all the way up to $100. Test your skills against the best and try to win that $1.5 million first place prize at Best Ball Mania. Don't forget, use promo code NERDS at Underdog Fantasy. Right. No, and I want to make sure that we reemphasize the original point with, like, if you can find those moves, awesome. But we are saying that the market right now is not the type of market where you would get rid of a quarterback and not get a quarterback in return. Like, this is not a sell market for quarterback. If you want to move one quarterback for another quarterback, sure, awesome. Find which guys you like better. Find where you think you can get a slight advantage, a slight edge. Awesome. Do that all day. But the overall market is not a sell quarterback market right now. It's a buy quarterback market. So look at what players you can buy. And if it takes a quarterback to get that guy, cool. But if you can give a player and get a quarterback, like, that's the best move. Like, if you could give a positional player and now get a quarterback that you did not have before, maybe you only had 2 and you needed that third, or maybe you're down to 1 because somebody retired or somebody's hurt or whatever. Like, this is the market where you utilize other players to go out and get a quarterback. Like, as much as I like Jalen Waddle and Brandon Ayuk and Jonathan Taylor and Rome Odunze, if I can get Dak Prescott for one of those guys, I'm gonna take Dak Prescott over all of those guys. They're good players. Those are championship caliber players. But I'm taking Dak Prescott. So that's what you're looking to do is, are there players right now looking at ADP that I could move a tight end, I could move a receiver, I could move a running back and get myself a quarterback that I did not have before?
Yeah, and the way today's NFL is, as it is currently, and the way the passive market works, I mean, when you look at a points per game basis, obviously Josh Allen, he's averaging about 24 points per game, which is, that's elite tier. Jalen Hurts, 21.9. Dak Prescott, 20.7. Lamar Jackson, 21.1. Jordan Love, who looked unbelievable at the end of last year, 19.4. And then a guy like Brock Purdy is right behind him at 19.2. But a lot of these markets, like CJ Stroud averaged 18.7. That's great. A lot of these quarterbacks are living in that range right now of about 16 to 17 points, right? Like a guy like Baker Mayfield, who is quarterback 10 on the year, and Tua Tagovailoa, who is quarterback 9, both average 16.7 points per game. Drastic ADP differences. When you look down here, and just for comparison, right? Like Baker had a rebound year, Tua was solid. They averaged 16 points per 7 points per game. Geno Smith averaged 15.7. You go down here and look at guys, Garrett, like when Jake Browning came in with the weapons around him. Know what Jake Browning averaged per game when he played? 16.7 points per game. He was exactly like Tua Tagovailoa and Baker Mayfield. Like there's lateral moves here to be made because, again, on a points per game differential, you're talking about 3 points per game for a lot of these guys. I mean, Josh Dobbs, he started off, had a couple good games, but he really flamed out hard. He averaged 16.2 points per game. Derek, and everyone here wants to sit here and drop their draws and doo-doo all over Derek Carr. And listen, I get it. Derek Carr averaged 14.7 points per game. Like it's 2 points per game difference. And now obviously that pushed Derek Carr to the quarterback number 16 overall, which is a mid-range quarterback too, but that's somebody you can win a championship with, right?
I did. Again, I won the UDPL league with Baker Mayfield and Derek Carr as my starting quarterback.
Yeah. So like there's a move here in Superflex. Like if you have some of these middling quarterbacks or like, but some of them are finishing higher as quarterback ones, you could probably make that lateral move to a quarterback 2, get that, drop down 2 points per game, but then make it up with an elite star player at the receiver position. That's going to average about 13, 14 points per game, which is going to give you what? Middling quarter, like those elite players are going to give you those middle-in quarterback numbers. And that's why we talk about so much about the middle-in quarterbacks, because they still give you that elite overall tier of players. So when I go to overall and I go to PPR, like when you look down here, even like a Stephon Diggs, who was 25th, but he faded real long. But like a Joe Mixon averaged 15.7 points per game. That's 1 point per game less than Tua Tagovailoa, right? And you're talking crazy talk when you're talking about ADP value. So like moving one of those players like a Tua for like a Baker Mayfield, for example, like you could probably get a Joe Mixon plus, you know what I mean? Like a Joe Mixon plus for Tua Tagovailoa for Baker Mayfield. And it's so easy when people look at these names and go, oh, gross, Baker, or oh, gross, Deshaun Watson, or whoever that player might be. There's moves out there right now in Superflex leagues that you can, and again, this is only for Superflex because one of quarterbacks, good luck trying to trade Baker Mayfield. Yeah. But you can make these lateral moves and go out there and get a player like Joe Mixon who will help your team significantly, right? And you're moving from Tua Tagovailoa to Baker Mayfield, who are almost identical quarterbacks on a game per basis over the year if you did it on average. And like you said, you won a championship. You won a championship in an industry league with Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield. So all you have to do is just like, again, it just comes down to building that whole team and not getting so consumed up on a name like, oh, yuck. Because if you told somebody like, hey, tell me your Superflex league, right? And you're like, all right, my quarterbacks are Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield. First thought in your head is going, well, that team sucks. You know what I mean? Like, hey, guys, let me tell you about our friends at Sleeper. Guess what? Our app the mini is live on Sleeper right now. The Dynasty GM, pretty. You can use the analyzer. You can use the trade calculator. And my favorite thing is the inbox, right? Where all your trades from all your Sleeper leagues are right there. You can actually push trades through the actual Sleeper app. And right now we couldn't be more excited to be partners with them. And right now, if you don't know, they are doing DFS. And I know how many people that play Dynasty play DFS as well. And right now, there's not a better place to play DFS than Sleeper. They're offering up to 100 times your entry, the highest payout in the whole DFS market right now. You can track your fantasy players and your sleeper picks in real time. All you got to do is choose 2 to 8 of your favorite players from pregame, live in-game, or even across different sports. Pick more or less than the predicted stats, and only on Sleeper you can get up to 100 times your payout. You can share with your friends and get rewarded together. Make sure you use that promo code NERD so our friends know that friends sent them their way. And get your deposit match and have a good time. You have all your DFS, all of your fantasy leagues, and now even a Dynasty GM in one spot. It is fully operational inside Sleeper right now. And then when you're a Nerd Herd member, you get that full access to that. And remember, you also want to download the Dynasty Nerds app because they're both in there. Check it out. Check our friend Sleeper. Check out the DFS. Use that promo code NERDS.
Get your whole estate.
That team sucks.
But then you show them you have Amon-Ra St. Brown and you have Christian McCaffrey and you have Derrick Henry, and like you're able to make it up at other positions. And Rich, this conversation, because I think this is a good conversation, it brings me back to an episode that we did, and maybe this is even the 2 episodes you're talking about, but it brings me back to our off-brand tear down. I don't know. We had like 5 different names for it. But episode that we did where we say, okay, you could have this guy, but instead take this guy, and here's all the extra you would get on top, because the difference is negligible, but you're going to be able to get so much extra on top. And that was the one, and actually got like 4 or 5 different DMs on this, because originally people were like, Garrett, you're stupid. But after they actually ran the numbers, they were like, holy crap, it's actually kind of a good move to make, where I said, hey, tear down from Patrick Mahomes to Dak Prescott. And on the surface, you're like, what? That's idiotic. But when you look at the trade calculator, the difference between Pat Mahomes and who you can get was a Garrett Wilson plus on top of that. And you look at the difference that makes for your overall team scoring compared to average players, like you're very happy with that type of return. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind there. And maybe we do that episode again where we say, don't take that player, take this player, and here's all that you can get on top.
Yeah, tearing down such a good move in Dynasty. It's such a good way to build a strong roster and not get hung up on those star players. And the star players are great to have, and you get a team around them. But if anything, it should be the asset that betters your team, right? Like that's fine. Like it sucks to part ways with them, but sometimes that's what you have to do to build a team. Because again, it's not about how good your team looks on paper. It's about putting yourself in the best position to win. So go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, at the end of the day, it's as much as we like to scout these guys and all this stuff, it is a math equation. Like, fantasy football is a giant math equation. That's all it is.
Yeah, points. And who can score the most points when it counts, which is mostly going to be weeks 15, 16, and 17. This year is where you want to put yourself in that kind of position. But on a week-to-week basis, like, giving yourself that slight edge. It's kind of why, it's why I've always preached now on the show for 10 years, as we inch closer to 11 years, about the tight end position and how much it gives you that edge over your league mates. Because on a points per game basis, like definitely in Dynasty, when you see it, like definitely when you get to the playoffs or your league's been going for multiple years, like you have top heavy teams, bottom teams, and teams in the middle, but the top teams are all going to be pretty good. So like you're looking for that slight edge, and it's not about one player's points per game basis. It's about your team's total points per game basis. And that's what you're trying to do, is fill out that roster. So speaking of the edge of tight end, I actually did have, and I knew you have one too, like I actually came up with a sell for the tight end position, which was still kind of few, because this was hard too, because the elite guys are at the top. Then there's a couple guys that kind of drizzle in right behind them, like the David Njokus, which they rightfully so do. And then everybody else is like, pick your poison, between Pat Freiermuth, Dallas Goedert, and for me, like, I wonder how long I can wait and just grab Kobe Parkinson, because he's in a good opportunity there with the Rams, like there's Noah Fant offers some upside this year, but I do have a sell here, and my guy is an older guy, but he's still going at the back end of that, like when he's the last really good guy to go, and he's going on a name basis, and he produces year in and year out, but he does it in a very particular way, and that's George Kittle. George Kittle's going to be 31 years old. And right now, like where he finished at, he's going to be, he's entering 31. I'm trying to see where he finished at real quick. I thought I had this up here. I apologize. Make sure I'm on PPR here. So George Kittle finished as tight end 5 overall. And, he really came off, what he normally does. He has some really big games. He had, we'll call this 19.6 game as a 20-point game. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 20-point games or 20-point game pluses. To put him in a tight end 5 there. On a points per game basis, though, he averages about 12.7. And 12.7 for me is at like right where he belongs. At like tight end 6, tight end 7 range, like that middle tier. You have the elite guys. Then you have those couple guys that score like 10 points or more. So like 10 to 12 points to me is usually like that middle tier, which can get you tight end 6 to tight end 10, right? But those guys are still valuable because they're scoring about a point to up to 2 points per game difference than everybody behind them. Because we all know that tier from like 11 on is just everybody. Like they're so close. So his 12.7 is just as good as David Njoku's 12.6. And then after that, you drop down a whole next tier for 7, 8, 9. And those guys all average 10.7, 10.7, 10.4, and then 10. You know what those names are? Trey McBride, Cole Kmet, Jake Ferguson, Dalton Schultz, right? All super attainable. And right now with George Kittle, when you look at that roller coaster, with the situation he is and what they have there now, and I don't look for this to change. And the reason why I don't look for it to change is because they just drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round of the NFL draft. So to me, it doesn't matter what happens with Brandon Ayuk. I guess it would more happen for Deebo Samuel because when you look at George Kittle, he averages when Deebo Samuel's on the field, when he's out there, he averages about 5 targets a game. And that's it. So he played 14 games with Deebo Samuel last year. And in those games, he averaged, the correct number is 5.1 targets per game. Once in the games that Deebo Samuel misses, Kittle goes off. He averages 9 targets per game in those 2 games. So for me, George Kittle is too much of a roller coaster. And on a points per game basis, like I can make that lateral move. Like if you offer George Kittle for David Njoku, you can get that. And I'd rather just tear down and get a couple years younger there, 3 years younger. But if I can get Jake Ferguson, if I can get, you're not going to get Trey McBride because Trey McBride, even on a points per game basis, he's out surpassed that. He's some people have him cited as one. We talked about it. We're going to talk about it again here in a second. But even like a Jake Ferguson, the upside, or Dalton Schultz is a good example, right? Like nobody wants to own Dalton Schultz, but he's coming in there, steady Eddie, quarterback, tight end 10, not elite, but he's going to give you 10 points per game. So again, that's a 2 point per game differential you have to make up. And honestly, if I can get Dalton Schultz in like a anywhere from 2.6 on, like 2.1 to 2.6, which in this tight end super flex draft, like I'm ecstatic about that. Like I'm getting
Jermaine Burton, baby.
Yeah, you're 100%. You're like, but not even Jermaine Burton. You're gonna get better than that. You're gonna get Ricky Pearsall. You're gonna get Trey Benson. You're gonna get any one of those running backs. So for me, George Kittle at being 31, again, these guys play a little bit longer, and it's more of the offense and system he plays in. He needs one of those guys to be out. And now even more so, though, bringing in a first-round pick in Ricky Pearsall, who is NFL ready right now, right? Like his route running ability, he played in college he's a little bit older of a prospect. He's ready right now to come in and fill in a role. So like all of that kind of works against George Kittle and that target share. And we know tight ends, they need those targets. George Kittle is elite enough to still finish really high with all those guys around him because he is that good. He's an elite tight end. But sometimes it's like we talked about, like Jalen Hurts, the situation he's in and the system he's in. Sometimes it's everything else around you that's also working against you. It can work for you and against you. And right now with George Kittle, where his ADP is, where he's going off the board, you can easily make a lateral move there and make up those points per game. Get a little bit younger, 31. Say he's got 2-3 more years left at best. I would much rather make a lateral move to a guy like Dalton Schultz, who's only like 26 years old, I believe, somewhere in that range, and pick up a second-round pick. Pick up a running back of need, like a Gus Edwards or a Zach Moss, like a simple move like that, where I could like upgrade my running back depth, upgrade a second-round draft pick, some of those moves. Some of that actually start on my roster that like make that differential. So. And those guys, more so even like a Joe Mixon, right? Like we mentioned his name earlier, who averaged 15.6 points per game, goes to Houston. His number one competition is Dameon Pierce. We've all seen how that worked out. Houston's upgraded their team significantly. Like, can I get Joe Mixon? Can I get any kind of other running back to kind of put myself in a position to win now and offset that George Kittle? So George Kittle is my sell. And I know if you got anything to comment on that, go ahead. I know you have a very interested in one as well.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on George Kittle. I don't want players where I'm waiting for their teammates to get hurt to want to play them. Like that's a really difficult place to be at, where you're hoping guys get hurt, because if they stay healthy all year, then when do you feel confident playing them? I get it. Debo's been banged up a lot, but they're even more insulated now with Ricky Pearsall. So there's just not going to be the target volume, more than likely, compared to what we've had in the past. So I have a couple that I feel like I could easily do, but the most obvious one for me is the flip side of what I said last night. I want Kyle Pitts, because I think there's a group of tight ends that are all very similar, that I would rather just have the last guy, and especially I would rather have a guy that there's not a clear-cut one in front of him. Well, right now, according to the ADP, there's basically a clear-cut tight end 1 and then a clear-cut tight end 2, which is very surprising to me. When we're looking at the tight end 1, it's not a surprise. Sam Laporta, after the year he had, he's being taken right around that turn between rounds 2 and 3 at the 23rd pick overall. But then the next one is kind of by himself as well. About a round later, pick 38 overall. So the very beginning of the 4th round, we're getting a guy in Trey McBride. Trey McBride he's going off, or no, that would be the end of the, yeah, I got it right. But he's going as the 38th player overall, and Dalton Kincaid's not going till 46. So he's basically in his own tier. And the thing for me with McBride is I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's a fantastic player. We were talking him up quite a bit when we were doing our tight end episodes a few years back. But he is in a situation where he's going to be the number 2 guy. It's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. So to me, the difference between Trey McBride taking him at ADP of 38.5, when I can wait an entire round and get my choice of Brock Bowers, Mark Andrews, and Kyle Pitts, I'd rather just wait. Give me somebody else around earlier at another position that I sorely need. Now I can get Michael Pittman Jr. instead of getting DK Metcalf and Zay Flowers. Now I can get Travis Etienne instead of having to go for James Cook. Like, it's those types of moves where, yes, it's only a little bit, but the difference between a guy like Trey McBride and Pitts, Andrews, and Bowers is negligible. And I'm not even convinced he's better. Where I'm very convinced that I'd rather have Travis Etienne, Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane over James Cook, Rashad White. Like, much rather have those guys all day long. So it's just the opportunity value. But there was one other one while I was scrolling through that was a little bit of a surprise for me. And I think we're getting a little too speculative. No, I said that wrong. Speculative on this player. And look, I'm all for thinking ahead. But if you get to tight end 17, which your tight end 17 is a guy that you are going to be playing at some point in the season, it's Isaiah Likely right now. He's being taken off the board as the 142nd player. Rank-wise, we have him ranked pretty close to 200 as far as the Nerds consensus. So I feel like we're just being a little too premature with drafting Isaiah Likely right now. Once again, when he's had the opportunity, he's been fantastic. But I don't want to have to root for someone to get injured in order for a player to be able to get my starting lineup. And that's what you need for Isaiah Likely right now. So he was a little bonus one I threw in there just because that number stood out to me and was a little peculiar at this point. I think it's a little premature. But Trey McBride's the main one there for me.
Yeah, Isaiah Likely is a very nice player, but he needs Mark Andrews to be out. Because, when Mark Andrews goes out, he does produce. We're talking about like 18 points, 11 points. But you're right. You need somebody to get hurt, and it's already not a high-throwing offense, and you got Zay Flowers there. You got Rashad Bateman, who they just kind of extended there as well. So I like the Trey McBride one because you're right. Like, he even last year. So I mentioned his points per game, but if you go from when Trey McBride really stepped up, which is, I think I put a video out, like if you two players to buy right now, it was Will Levis and Trey McBride. And like literally the following week, they started like going off. And that was like probably one of my best takes last year was go out and buy Trey McBride now. And it was right before Trey McBride blew up. So it's probably one of the takes I was probably most proud of last year. Yeah. But if you go from week 8 on, Trey McBride, where he really kind of took the big step forward, he was averaging 15 points per game, which is very elite. That's elite for a tight end. So much so where it propelled him to where he is saying dynasty ranks. But like he wasn't even the number one tight end from week 8 on. That was David Njoku and Evan Ingram. David Njoku averaged 15.8 points per game in PPR. Evan Ingram averaged 15.5, and then Trey McBride averaged 15. Sam Laporta, the beast of all beasts, averaged 14.9. George Kittle, 14.7, because that's where he had some of those big games where Tebow was out. And then it drops down to that 12 points per game from that point. But but TJ Hawkinson right now, he averaged 15.4. He averaged more than Trey McBride. And right now with that injury and people saying, hey, Hawkinson's probably not going to be back until, maybe November, you could easily flip probably Trey McBride for Hawkinson plus, which is a move I love. I love flipping Trey McBride for Kyle Pitts and a slight plus if I can get it. I'm okay with trading for Mark Andrews in a plus. I'd probably still want to lean McBride there because of the age right there. I don't want to get out of that age gap too much. Definitely the tight ends because it's once they're out, it's so hard to reset there, right? And it's real nice to same thing I mentioned the George Kittle thing. If you could just kind of reset and feel comfortable and still stay in that same age group with a Trey McBride. And I love the names that you mentioned in your take. Definitely for Kyle Pitts is my number one. Even Brock Bowers. Can I flip Trey McBride for Brock Bowers? Can I do that? Just to get a 21-year-old top 10 pick who's an absolute stud. Can I do that and just get a little bit younger and be okay with it? Because I am worried that with Trey McBride, with the Marvin Harrison news, he might drop down to anywhere from that 15 points per game to down to that 12 points per game. And that 3-point differential at tight end does make you go to the more of the middle of the pack. So I like that. I like that sell. He skyrocketed so much. Sometimes when players do that, definitely at this position, and they're just really good, but most of it's target share wise, it's always usually a good time to sell. Not get out, not just sell because you don't like them, but just the lateral moves, right? Tearing down. Yep. Tearing down. So that was it. I think this was a good discussion. I'm glad we had it. I was kind of pessimistic going into it. I was man, I couldn't find a sell, but I really enjoyed the conversation that came out of this episode. And I hope it helps some of our listeners. So we'll be back next week. We're actually going to bust back the episode of what are the odds of a running back one being a running back one more than once. So if you remember this episode, we did it a couple years ago and the numbers were pretty astonishing. We went back 12 years of running back data and found the odds of them being a running back one again are not very good. So we have all that data. We are updating it for the last couple of years. And then we're actually going to do it for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. So we're going to give you all that data. What are the odds of a player finishing as a tight end one, quarterback one? Obviously, every other position are probably much higher. But you're going to find out, if you have not heard the episode before, how hard it is to be a running back one more than just once, and how much harder it is to be a running back one more than 2 times, because these numbers start to drop. So we'll be back next week. If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a rating and review wherever you find us. It really does help the show, definitely this time of year. If you're not a member of the Nerd Herd, get out there, check us out, check out the tools we have to offer. The film room, it's never going to be too early to start watching film here soon. But of course, we have the Dynasty GM. It's the number one tool in the Dynasty market today. It's absolutely free to download in any app store today. Go download it, see what it has to offer, and put your team in there. Give it a try for a cup of coffee. Play around with it. Use it for a month. For the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to all our tools, all our data, which we have so much more data coming come August, right around there. I can't wait for that. So much data. Get in for that cup of coffee now because you're going to be so happy with it. But That's it. Like you go out and try, like somebody says, hey, I heard this really new coffee is fantastic. And you love coffee, right? You're like, where's that? Like it's Starbucks. Like, oh shit, that's going to cost me a couple bucks. It's at Starbucks. I know where they got the second part of that name. Go out. You would go try it, right? Like I love burgers. So you're like, this place has a great burger. I'm going to go try that burger. It's going to cost me way more than Dynasty GM. Go out there, give it a whirl. It's free to download. Look at the aesthetics of it. Look at the UI. You're going to find real quick that it's very sexy. It's to your liking. Your nipples might get a little hard. No promises, but likely. And play around with it and see where you finish. So we'll be back next week talking more. We appreciate you, Nerd Herd. Adios. Hey, Dynasty Nerds, it's time to take your Dynasty game to the next level with FFPC's Dynasty Startup Leagues. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting started, FFPC has a league for you with entry fees ranging from $100 up to $5,000. Choose from a variety of formats, including Superflex, Best Ball Superflex, Triflex, 1QB, and Standard. With weekly lineups, waivers, trades, head-to-head matchups, and playoffs, FFPC's fully managed leagues provide the ultimate Dynasty experience. Most importantly, the leagues are here to stay. FFPC has never had a Dynasty league fold. They manage the entire commissioner experience from buy-in management to fulfilling your orphans. FFPC is perfect place to expand your Dynasty league portfolio. And here's the best part. As Dynasty Nerds listener, you can get $25 off any entry fee as a new member when you use the promo code NERDS. Head over to myffpc.com now to draft your team, manage your roster, and dominate your league with FFPC. That's myffpc.com. Promo code NERDS for $25 off any entry fee for new members. FFPC, where Dynasty dreams become a reality.